Welcome back to another episode of BreBre Talks MMA. So the first thing I want to get into is the Nemesis Fighting Alliance event we had on Friday right here in St. Louis at the Armory, which was an incredible venue. This was probably one of my favorite local shows I've been to for multiple different reasons. First of all, Nemesis does an excellent job with the production, with promoting the fights, with giving the fighters a platform. They found an amazing venue. I mean, they used to have them at Ballpark Village, which I thought was super cool. And then now they're having them at the Armory, which is amazing. I mean, this venue was just unreal. Jeremiah Scott versus Dakota Bush was the main event. And I'm going to get into that fight in a second. The whole card from top to bottom was so much fun. There were actually a lot of really good amateur fights on this card. I'm trying to keep them all straight. I cannot remember all of the fights because my phone died during like the last half of the amateur fights. So I got like the first 4 or 5 fights recorded on my phone, and then the rest of them, my phone died. So sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. But I tried, okay? I tried. But the first fight of the night was absolutely insane. Bryce Kaiser got a first round knockout TKO, whatever you want to call it. What a way to kick it off. He really did just kind of go in there with the intention of, as Ray Hayes would say, separating his opponent from their consciousness. Still my favorite line. Still my favorite Ray Hayes line. Man, that guy doesn't talk a lot, but when he does talk, he says some really interesting stuff. And then we had Jackson Ward made his MMA debut, got a first round submission. That was just beautiful. Man, I did not expect that. Not gonna lie. Jackson is a super nice guy and very chill. Like, just seems like such a normal dude. Like, you did not expect him to go in there and destroy his opponent like that. I mean, it was just absolute destruction. So, wow, what a debut for Jackson Ward. That was super impressive. I was very, very impressed with that. And his ability to just stay calm. I mean, even backstage, felt like he was just kind of pretty chill, honestly. I mean, I don't know what's going on in his head. He could be freaking out for all I know. But on the outside looking in, looked like he stayed pretty calm. So, yeah, that was insane. And then Zach Binkins gets another first round finish. And that was a really, really fun fight too. And then after that was an incredible fight. Caden Osick versus Xavier Thomas. It was really fun to watch. One of my favorite fights on the card. It did get fight of the night. I thought my 2 favorite fights of the night were Logan Jones versus Calvin Gilmore and Caden Osick versus Xavier Thomas. Those were my 2 favorite fights. Derek Davis versus Atticus Brunner. So Atticus had an extremely entertaining fight. It didn't last very long because he ended up getting the knockout, but that was a really fun fight, and he did kind of face some adversity, which, you know, I think is a good thing. In your amateur career, I think that I've seen enough amateur fights to kind of tell, you know, that if a fighter almost has too perfect of an amateur career, sometimes that kind of just raises a lot of question marks when they go pro. So I do think it's a good thing as an amateur to have that adversity early on, but then be able to overcome that adversity is even better, obviously, which is what Atticus did. Man, that kick that he threw was gnarly, and it was, I think he kind of set it up with, I can't even remember the whole thing. I'll have to watch the fight again once they're up on YouTube, but I think he set it up with maybe a couple punches. I can't remember exactly what he threw, but yeah, nonetheless, it was a very impressive performance. That was probably the one that stood out to me the most, probably on the amateur fights, was that one, or at least on the early part of the card, before the intermission. That was probably the one that I remembered the most clearly. But man, a lot of great fights on this card. It was insane. Logan Jones versus Calvin Gilmore, like I said, that was an insane fight. Obviously, would have loved to see Logan win the fight. I mean, I train at ESMMA, which is where Logan trains, so you always want to see your teammates and your friends win. But I think that, you know, this is a performance that obviously didn't get the result that he wanted, which you always want to win. But I thought that Logan showed that, first of all, he's got a lot of heart. To be able to get, I think it was maybe in the third round, I think is when he got kind of rocked. To be able to fight your way through that is huge. And I think that is a testament to, you know, how hard he's been training. It's a testament to just his will and his heart. I think that he showed that he has what it takes to be a fighter. I really do. And maybe sometimes you have to lose a fight to figure that out. You know, I think Logan does have what it takes. I really do. And I think that this fight actually will probably do more good for him than if he would have won the same way that he won the last fight. Because his last performance was extremely impressive. Extremely impressive. He got 9 takedowns. I mean, it was insane. So obviously you see that performance and, you know, you are impressed nonetheless. But I'm still just as impressed with this performance, even though he lost, as I was with the last one. And it's because he showed more areas of his game too. He showed more of his striking. He showed that he has a chin. He showed that he can handle the pressure. He showed a lot of things. And I think that this will help him, maybe not so much right now, but when he goes pro, which I do believe he will, when he goes pro, this will be a fight that will prepare him for his pro career, I believe, for many different reasons. But yeah, and his opponent, man, he put up a really good fight. So whereas I thought, you know, Logan was going to go in there and do what Logan does, I mean, man, his opponent was game. So, yeah, and that's what made it such a great fight, too, which they both were 100% in there. They gave it everything they had. And, you know, maybe it's just a few adjustments that Logan needs to make. You know, I'm not his coach, so I'm not going to sit here and tell him what he needs to do because I really don't know. That's for Eric to figure out, not me. But I do still see a ton of potential in Logan, and I do still think that regardless of the result, I do think that he will make it very far in his career in MMA. So props to Logan for putting up a great fight, and props to Calvin for getting the win and for doing it in an impressive way against a very tough opponent in Logan. So, yeah, that was a great fight. And then I kind of got lost after that. There were a few more fights. I know Troy Harvey Valiant. Yes, that was the kickboxing fight, and that was a unanimous decision win for Troy. Gosh, my brain is fried. And I've seen Troy fight before. I saw his last fight in Stand-Up Fight Series. He looked fantastic. And he's actually really got some impressive wins if you look at his amateur kickboxing career. I think he's not getting finishes, but he's putting on impressive technical performances. So I think there's something to be said for that. And I'm excited to see him again. I mean, he's definitely one that's been on my radar of fighters to watch, and there's so many local fighters, so it's hard for me to keep track of all of them sometimes, especially since I cover the UFC and PFL and all these other different organizations. But he's definitely been on my radar. And then the next fight after that, Malachi Mitchell, that fight was that was an MMA fight, I believe. I want to make sure because I don't want to sound stupid. Oh, okay, now I remember. Yes, that was actually a good fight too. Malachi Mitchell versus Luke Winston. Luke Winston ended up getting the win there, but yeah, I thought it was a great fight. And then Tavon Taylor got a knee bar submission, so that was absolutely insane. And I'm kind of looking up some of this stuff right now because I didn't have time to yesterday. But Tavon Taylor is an amateur, but a very experienced amateur. So he has quite a few amateur MMA fights, and he also has some amateur kickboxing fights as well. He looked great on the feet too, I thought. I mean, it wasn't very long of a fight, so it's kind of hard to judge. And this being my first time seeing him fight, I don't really know much about him. But I'm looking here, and it looks like he is, at least it says he's 7-3 in MMA. In amateur MMA. So yeah, he's probably about to go pro, I would think. I'm excited. It looks like he's had a lot of first round finishes too. And he's not fighting easy opponents. He's never fought anybody with a losing record. His opponent, Corey Donovan, he was 3-1 going into this fight. His last fight, he lost to Chris Connors. Chris Connors, I've actually trained with before. He's exceptional. Very talented fighter. See, I can just go down these rabbit holes on these MMA pages. It's so easy. But yeah, Tavon is one I'm definitely, if he wasn't on my radar before, he is now. And then Clark Stith, he's been on my radar for a minute. I honestly expected him to win just because of the way he won his last fight. I thought he looked very dominant on the ground. And then this time he got a first round submission. These guys coming out of Wolf's Den are monsters. They really are. And I think that what they're doing there is really cool too with the cross training that they're doing. They're allowing fighters from other gyms to come train there and vice versa, which I think will be a really cool thing for St. Louis Combat Sports. I am going to do a breakdown of the 2 pro fights. So we got Ray Hayes and we've got Dakota Bush. Ray Hayes is now 3-0 in pro MMA. He had a very good amateur career as well. He was 9-1 as an amateur. Never been finished. Yeah, he's a problem. He is a problem. And not only that, but he's a showman too. Like, you wouldn't expect it. Like, I had him on my podcast and I talked to him for about an hour. And not the most talkative guy in the world, but I honestly don't think he needs to be. He has literally everything you could ask for in a fighter. Fun to watch. He puts on entertaining performances. He's young. He's only 22. He's got a ton of skill. When he's in the octagon, it just seems like more than a fight. It's really a performance for him. And he's a crowd pleaser. I mean, man, the crowd was going nuts after that fight. And the way he got on top of the cage and he's like brushing his shoulder, I'm like, man, this guy's got so much swag. It's really fun to see a fighter early in their career already just doing everything right. He said he trains at Parabellum, and he's got another pro fighter, Colton Carmack, I think is his name. Yeah, Colton Carmack. So he's another pro fighter, and he's kind of taking Ray under his wing a little bit, I guess, in kind of helping him with deciding on his matchups and kind of doing a little bit of that work for him so that Ray doesn't have to worry about finding fights and all that stuff. You know, Colton kind of helps him with that and helps him with the strategy and the game plan and all that side of it. So it's really honestly brilliant what he's done with aligning with the right people and getting on a track for his career to, I mean, man, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in the UFC in the next couple of years. I really wouldn't. With the strength of schedule that he had as an amateur, that's why I say that, because he fought 10 times in 1 year. Or over the course of a year, I guess you could say. Maybe a little bit over a year. If he's even able to do 5 fights in a year, that could get him to the UFC within the next 2 years. Like, that's the thing. So, because he's already got 3 fights as a pro, 5 more fights, he's 8-0 if he wins all of them. So, I mean, yeah, that's not unheard of now. That's the thing. I mean, he could go in Contender Series at 7-0, 8-0, and end up getting signed. Absolutely he could. I am very excited to see what's next for him, because I do think in order to do that, he is going to need some higher level opponents. The thing is, it's going to be really hard for him to find an opponent, especially after that. I mean, he's just going out and finishing these people so easily. So it's going to be hard for him to find an opponent. He's got very good boxing, and he told me that he started boxing before he started MMA. So he has kind of a background in boxing, which was like basically the discipline that he started with. And then also, not only that, but he has good ground game. He's got a ton of submissions under his belt already. So he's got good boxing combined with good ground game. That's a dangerous fighter. And he's got reach. Yeah, I think he's going to have a lot of success. I think he is absolutely, if you were to take all the ingredients of a fighter that's going to be successful, it would be Ray Hayes. He's got all the ingredients. He's got the sauce. He's got the talent. He's got the skill. He's got it all. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very excited. I am curious to what he's going to look like against, maybe somebody that's got more of a resume. I'm curious to see how that's going to go, but I am not going to doubt this guy until I have a reason to. So it's just really hard to bet against somebody like that. Really hard. Got a lot of confidence too, which I think is huge. And it's not a fake confidence. You can kind of tell when somebody has a fake confidence. But I talked to this dude for an hour. His confidence is legit. He knows what he's got going on. So, yeah, I don't see him losing anytime soon, but I could be wrong. I mean, I've been wrong before, but he just has that thing, that when you see somebody and you're like, oh, that guy's going to be in the UFC one day. He's got that thing. He's got it. I don't know what to call it or what it is, but he's got it. So I don't know. Anyways, getting back to his performance, it was an interesting fight because it started off with his opponent was honestly, he threw some really nice combinations at Ray to start off the fight. And I think Ray's boxing experience was kind of what allowed him to stay calm in that situation and not really allow that to affect him. I mean, he really looked unfazed. And he got hit with some bombs. I'm not even lying. There was, I can't remember what combo it was, but a couple straight punches that his opponent threw. And honestly, it looked like it probably hurt quite a bit. I mean, Ray didn't look affected by it, but it looked like it hurt. Threw a couple kicks too that were really nice. So then Ray immediately took it to the ground. And I don't know that Ray took it to the ground because he was afraid to stand with his opponent. I don't think he was afraid to stand with him by any means. It didn't look like it to me. I just think that Ray saw an opportunity to take him down and took it, which is smart. That's what you should do, and slammed him against the octagon right in front of his corner. Beautiful. Love it. Just how fast he took him down was insane. So I was really impressed with the takedown that started off the sequence. And then also he had to kind of change positions a couple times because like at first his opponent tried to get him in a guillotine. He kind of had to transition off to the side a little bit, but not like side control. Like he had one of his knees on his opponent's stomach, and then that was when he was kind of going for the arm triangle choke, and eventually he got it, but he had to kind of adjust a few times to get it. And his opponent was moving around a lot too, so sometimes you see a fighter try really, really hard for a choke and then they don't get it, and I was afraid that was what was going to happen. But he stayed committed to it and he got it and he finished the fight. So it was really impressive, and and it was just fun watching the whole thing. I mean, from start to finish, from his walkout, which was awesome too. I mean, he had and I don't know if a lot of people know who Zeus is, but he had Zeus Waters walk him out, who's pretty well known in like the St. Louis hip hop scene. And I remember him back from when I worked at Jupiter Studios because he was there occasionally, and he's been around for a long time. So that's pretty cool to have him walk you out. The whole thing was fun, and I very much enjoyed it. So congratulations to Ray Hayes on another first round finish. He's 3-0 now, 3 first round finishes. So we'll see who's willing to step up to the plate and fight him next. I really think it's going to be difficult for him to find somebody, but we'll see. Hopefully he can. The main event, Dakota Bush versus Jeremiah Scott. So Jeremiah Scott, I believe, was 10-7 going into this fight, and he has a lot of experience. He also has experience in bare knuckle fighting championship and bare knuckle boxing. So this was a high level fight. And to me, the type of fighter that Jeremiah is kind of really what you get a lot in bare knuckle boxing. And bare knuckle boxing is a completely different game than boxing, than MMA, than kickboxing. It's just a different sport. And you could argue in a lot of ways that it's easier because there is less training involved in bare knuckle boxing than there is in MMA. I think MMA has probably out of all of the combat sports, probably has one of the more demanding training regimens than all of them. It's very hard on the body. So bare knuckle boxing, you don't have to train the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. You don't have to worry about kicks. You don't have to worry about getting calf kicked and stuff like that. So in some senses, it's easier in that way. There's less ways to lose. There's also less ways to win, though. But on the other side of that, on the flip side, bare knuckle boxing is very difficult because not having the gloves turns it into a completely different game. And I don't think people understand, like, in bare knuckle boxing, most of the time, even if you win, you're probably gonna walk away with some scars and you're gonna walk away with some damage to your face, even if you win, because it doesn't take much. It does not take much for you to get cut. It doesn't take much for, your face to kind of blow up and get really swollen. So there's also that. Also, broken hands are more common in bare knuckle boxing because you cannot hit as hard as you can with a glove on. I do think that one aspect of bare knuckle boxing, when you compare it to traditional boxing, that also makes it more difficult, and why I think a lot of MMA fighters are very good at bare knuckle boxing, is because of the clinch. So in bare knuckle boxing, you can clinch as long as you have one hand free to punch and you're actively throwing it. I believe that is the rule. So you can't really do that in regular boxing, obviously. And then also just not having the gloves makes a huge difference. Like, that's why we see sometimes Muay Thai in MMA gloves is more fun to watch, because clinching with gloves on is a lot more, well, it's not necessarily that it's more difficult, but it's just different with gloves on and not with gloves on. So Jeremiah Scott, obviously a very tough opponent. And he's got a lot of different experience, not only MMA, he's got bare knuckle boxing. So definitely presented a lot of challenges for Dakota. And Dakota, he's been in the UFC, so obviously he's good. You cannot go to the UFC if you're not good. Let's just clarify that. If you've made it to the UFC, you are good. You are very good. Better than most if you've made it to the UFC as an MMA fighter. Especially in Dakota's division. And he only fought for the UFC twice. So he had 2 fights in the UFC. I am a little surprised that he got cut as fast as he did. But at the same time, he's in the lightweight division. And things change so much with MMA that it's like, if he was in the UFC right now and had a 2-fight losing streak, I don't think he would get cut. But at the time that he got cut, that's just how things were going. So I just don't see the point of him competing on this level anymore, especially after seeing that. And he even gave his performance a D- when he was on the mic afterwards. I think he'll probably change his thoughts on that when he rewatches the fight, if he hasn't rewatched the fight already. What I think is important to note about this performance is how much skill Dakota showed in this fight, for multiple reasons. So, and this is why I think he has a strong case for getting back into the UFC, just because it was so dominant of a performance. This was an extremely dominant performance. There were very few moments in this fight where we thought Dakota had even a chance of losing. It was insane how much control he had in this fight. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that has a lot to do with him training with Grant Dawson, is Grant Dawson's ability to take you down and keep you there is insane. I think that is probably what he is best at, is his control on the ground, which is easier than it sounds, or harder than it sounds. Sorry. because when you look at Dakota's opponent, if you watch the fight over again, you'll kind of see what I'm saying. Very active on the bottom. Very active on the bottom, constantly trying to set up submissions, throwing elbows from the bottom, and Dakota shut it all down. He shut it all down. He did get cut with an elbow at one point, or maybe a couple elbows from the bottom, which just shows you how talented Jeremiah is from his back. Dakota's performance showed that he has the ability not only to take you down, but to keep you there. And that is a skill that not a lot of fighters have. And that's why I do think he belongs in the UFC. And I think he will do extremely well when he goes back to the UFC. I think he's improved a lot, even just from training at ATT. And it just shows you, having those training partners. Because if you're in the lightweight division, that gym gives you probably the best possible training partners you could ask for. He's got Grant Dawson. He's got Gamrot, who's about to fight this weekend. And he's got Dustin Poirier. He's got all these guys that are so high level in the UFC. Look at the top 15 in the UFC, and look how many of them train at ATT. It's insane. So I think that, and honestly, Dakota kind of looked like Grant Dawson a little bit in this fight. But the one thing that he is really good at is still doing damage while he's on top with these elbows, which you couldn't really see. Like when I watched it the first time, it was kind of far away, so I couldn't see what was going on the ground exactly. But when I watched it again in the replay, he was throwing a lot of short elbows from the bottom, or from the top, that were doing a ton of damage. Not only that, but also there are a couple of things I want to highlight in his performance. When Dakota gets him on the ground, he does an excellent job of controlling the space between them to make sure that Jeremiah doesn't have space to throw up a triangle, maybe land some damage of his own from the bottom, or give him an opportunity to get up. So Dakota did a great job controlling that space and in keeping his opponent where he wants him. That's what really stood out to me. He also did a great job with his head position, and I think that's really important too, with maintaining that space, or not giving your opponent too much space, and also keeping them on the ground. And even in the second round, I can't remember if it was the second round or the third round, his wrist control too, where he was basically grabbing Jeremiah's wrist and controlling that arm, which honestly is really smart, because that not only helps you control your opponent, but also can prevent them from trying for different submissions off his back, which Jeremiah, to his credit, was really slick on the from the bottom. I thought there were a couple times where he had an opportunity to possibly get a submission, but of course, with Dakota being so talented in the grappling department, he pretty much shut all of that down. So I probably could watch this fight 10 times and never get sick of it, just because each time I watch it, it's like there's a new thing that I notice in Dakota's performance. And it was just incredible to watch that high level of MMA on a local level, like being able to watch this in my backyard pretty much. We didn't get to see as much stand-up from him, but he did throw some really nice kicks. I would have probably liked to see a little bit more of his striking, but he's so talented on the ground. First of all, he's got a ton of experience in this sport. He's been training and fighting for over a decade in MMA, but also he's just leveled up so much with training with Grant and training with Gamrot, two of the best grapplers in the lightweight division right now. Like I said, I would have liked to see more of a stand-up, but I'm really not mad about it, just because his grappling is so excellent. It's kind of the same thing with like Khabib. Yeah, I would have liked to see more of a stand-up, but don't really care, because his grappling is so good that it does not matter. You can go so far in this sport with that style. And Dakota's tough, too. That's the thing. He's tough. So I don't see any reason why he shouldn't go back to the UFC. I guess some people might argue, like, oh, he needed to get a finish or whatever. I don't know. I don't think so. Hopefully the right opportunity pops up for him soon. It is about to be turkey season. So if you want Dakota to fight, you better be the UFC. That's all I'm saying. So maybe we will see him. That would be really cool to see him on the St. Louis card May 11th. That would be awesome. We'll see if he will make an exception for the turkey season. The only complication, though, with Dakota is that he's in the lightweight division, which is a very tough division. I really do wonder if you were to put all the lightweight fighters on a list, and I know they have the rankings on SureDog and Tapology and all that, but that doesn't really tell you anything. Because a lot of times those rankings aren't even completely accurate. But I just wonder, where is he at as far as, like, the rankings go overall? Like, if he was in the UFC, where would he be ranked? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm trying to see if I can find some kind of ranking somewhere. They don't really have rankings anywhere. They used to have that, or maybe they still do. Maybe I just can't find it, but they used to have, like, it would show you a ranking. But let's take a look at the UFC real quick. The UFC matchmaking rankings, whatever you want to call it. So let's look at the top 15 at lightweight. So we've got Drew Dober is number 15. Bobby Green's number 14. See, I feel like there are some winnable fights for Dakota, even in the top 15. And then you've got Gamrot, you got Dariush, you got Fiziev, you got Jalen Turner, Dan Hooker, Dos Anjos, St. Denis. But I also feel like this is a time where we're going to see a shift in the top 15 at lightweight too. So I think this is a good time, honestly, for Dakota to try to get back in the picture in the UFC at lightweight. I think this is a perfect time for him. I mean, Grant Dawson's not in the top 15 anymore, but he's top 15 level. I mean, he had the loss to Bobby Green. It is what it is. He got caught. But if you look at his entire resume, it's like, dude, that guy was on a tear for a long time. If you have been following any local MMA, or if you've been following Dakota and you've been following the UFC, who do you think, if Dakota were to go back to the UFC, who do you think he should fight? So also this weekend, we had a UFC fight night at the Apex. Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Shamil Gaziev. Shamil Gaziev previously undefeated and then ends up, I guess they call it a retirement is what they call it. But yeah, he ends up losing that fight to Rozenstruik. Can't say I'm super surprised. It's heavyweight, so it's really hard to predict these fights. It was just kind of a strange fight. But man, Jairzinho put it on him. He really did. So besides Gaziev losing the fight, there were quite a few things happening on that card. Oliveira got an insane knockout. Not Charles Oliveira. It was a different Oliveira. That was an insane knockout. I thought he was going to lose the fight, and then he gets the knockout, and it was one of the best knockouts I've ever seen. Like, man, it was... Sheesh. Yeah, I don't even know how to put it into words, but and then Steve Ercik got an insane knockout as well. There was an interesting fight between who was it? Who was this fight? Oh, Javid Basharat versus Ayman Zahabi. I would have to watch it again to really say, or to get super torn on it, but I thought Basharat won. So I was a little surprised that they gave it to Zahabi, but maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I didn't see something in the fight, but I thought Basharat was going to get it. So I don't know. I was a little surprised. Umar Nurmagomedov, I really hope that they can find some better fights for him. I just felt like that was a little bit, I don't know, not that it was a mismatch, because in MMA, it's kind of hard to have mismatches sometimes, but he did get rocked in this fight, and I think it was in the first round. So yeah, I don't know. I wonder what's going to happen when he faces someone who's like similar in skill and similar in resume. He's in the top 15, so I just feel like at this point he should only be fighting people in the top 15, in my opinion, from now on. Now this fight, I don't have a problem with it, but moving forward, I would like to see top 15 opponents for Umar. I really, at some point, would love to see him versus Merab. Obviously, Merab is leaps and bounds ahead of him right now, but I think eventually that would be an insanely good fight. And then, let's see what else happened. Muhammad Makayev won. Yeah, I mean, there were some great performances on this card. Actually, a lot of great performances on this card. And Eric Anders got a win, which is good to see. He's been in the game for so long. And Jamie Pickett, too. Kind of sucks to see him go out like that. I'm pretty sure he retired. But, yeah, I mean, but it was a good fight. It was a fun fight, I thought. Chris Duncan absolutely demolished Claudio Ribeiro, which that was impressive. AJ Cunningham lost his debut. That sucks. I was kind of excited about him, but we'll see. I mean, I think he took that fight on short notice, so it's like, you know, I think we'll see him again. He was a huge underdog in that fight. I mean, the odds were completely stacked against him. So moving on to what everybody's really excited about, it's UFC 299, baby. This Saturday, UFC 299, Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. And I really don't even know how to predict this fight. I don't think I'm going to. But I really do have a feeling that Sean O'Malley is going to win again. Because he did have a lot of great moments in the first fight with Chito. Even though he messed up his leg and arguably Chito did that. You know, there's a reason why they throw leg kicks. There's a reason why they do damage besides just punching them into the face. There's a reason for it. It's because they're trying to hurt their opponent. I do think that Sean has improved probably a little bit more than Chito. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I am a big Chito Vera fan, so I will be happy either way. I will be happy if either of them win. I'll be happy with a draw. I don't care. But I do think O'Malley's going to hang on to the belt at least for one more fight. When he fights Merab, then I will have a different opinion. But in this fight, I think I'm still going with O'Malley, but I think it's close. I think Chito has a very good chance to win this fight. So we'll see. And then Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis. That is such an interesting fight. I still have no idea who I think is going to win. I want to say Dustin, just because he's so much more experienced. I mean, look at who he's fought. Look at his resume. It's out of this world. So, and I think he's only gotten better. I mean, he got caught with the head kick from Gaethje, so there's that. And Benoit has some nice head kicks too, so that does kind of worry me. I don't know. I'd like to see Dustin grapple in this fight. I think that would be interesting. I think he could really use his jiu-jitsu and get kind of maybe a slick submission or something, come up with something creative. I don't know. He's such a veteran that I feel like he has more tools in his toolbox than Benoit does, but Benoit has a lot of momentum going for him. Very talented. He's young. He's hungry. I feel like he could really make a name for himself with a win over Dustin Poirier. But I don't know. It's kind of one of those things. It's a newcomer versus a veteran, and we don't know how it's going to go. It's like you could try to predict these fights a million times, and they could go a million different ways. So hard to say, but I am leaning toward Dustin, although I am a big BSD fan. Then we've got Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page. I am so excited for this fight. Michael Venom Page making his UFC debut against Kevin Holland, who's a vet. He's 25-10, Michael Venom Page 21-2. They're both around a similar height. I don't know what Michael Venom Page's reach is. I know Kevin Holland does have a really long reach for that division, and this is at welterweight. So Kevin Holland previously has fought at middleweight as well, but this is a welterweight fight. I do think that this could be a nightmare for Michael Venom Page. I think Kevin Holland has many ways that he could expose MVP, whether it be on the ground or on the feet. The way that MVP fights, I think, could either be a problem for Kevin or could work extremely well for him. I think that Kevin Holland, he's a fighter that I've really paid a lot of attention to, and there are a lot of things that I like about him. First of all, he really does not care if he wins or not, I don't think. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's good. I think that he loves to fight. He's very passionate about fighting, and he will get in there with anyone. He does not care. And I love that about him. And he just is able to maintain a positive attitude no matter what. And he can go in, he could be on a 3-fight losing streak and still go into the next fight and still have most people thinking that he's going to win. And he could go out there and do it. He's just impressed me so many times that it's really hard to pick against him at this point. He really surprised me against Chiesa. Submitted him. That's crazy. I mean, Chiesa has, how many submissions does he have? He's like, most of his wins were by submission. So it's like, yeah, I think that would probably be a great area for Kevin Holland to expose. MVP would be on the ground. But I also do think that he could stand with him on the feet and win that way too. I don't think MVP is impossible to beat standing up, which a lot of people seem to think. I know he's got a great kickboxing background, but so does Kevin Holland. He's got a lot of skill on the feet. And yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how to predict this fight as far as like how I think it's going to play out, because I have no idea. Is Kevin Holland going to stand with him? Is he going to take it to the ground? I don't know. How is Michael Venom Page's takedown defense? What's all that going to look like? I don't know. It's very interesting, too, because it's his debut in the UFC. It's crazy. He's had such a long career already as a pro in MMA, and he's finally going to the UFC and facing probably one of the trickiest opponents that you could face in the UFC in your debut. So it's going to be really interesting. And then the next fight is Jack Della Maddalena versus Gilbert Burns. I'm really interested in this fight because Gilbert Burns' jiu-jitsu is unreal. It's on a different level completely from probably almost everybody in the UFC. And Jack Della Maddalena has extremely good boxing. Actually, funny enough, the last guy that Maddalena fought was Kevin Holland. And it was a close fight. So I'm not sure what to expect here. I just think it's going to be really hard to derail JDM's momentum. He's got a lot of momentum going for him. So it's going to be really hard for anybody to put a stop to that, I think. And then also just, yeah, I think if he can avoid getting taken down, then he'll be fine. But if he gets taken down, then I think Burns will be able to do whatever he wants to JDM. I really do. Like, people do not understand how good Gilbert Burns is on the ground. It's insane how good he is on the ground. Insane. So we'll see. I don't know how that's going to go. Not entirely sure. But it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close. Don't know if it's going to be a finish. I mean, I could see Gilbert Burns getting a submission. But I don't know. I could see this going all 3 rounds. Actually. I actually do. Which is kind of surprising coming out of my mouth with two fighters like that. I mean, let's see, how many finishes does JDM have? He's got 11 knockouts, 2 submissions. So yeah, of course he could absolutely get a knockout, and it wouldn't shock me. But I don't know. I actually do think this might go the distance. I could be wrong. And then we've got Petr Yan versus Song Yadong. This is a very exciting fight at bantamweight. This is a huge test for Song Yadong. I feel like this is either going to make or break his career. And Petr Yan is on quite the skid, unfortunately. But I like to point out a few things about Petr Yan's last few fights, I guess you could say, or his last 5 fights. So he's won 1 fight out of his last 5, Corey Sandhagen, and that was for the interim bantamweight championship. That was a few years ago. So he hasn't lost. He hasn't won a fight in quite a while. But you look at his losses. First, he got DQ'd. Okay. But up until that point, let's be honest, he was beating the brakes off of Aljamain Sterling. The second fight with Aljamain was closer. Definitely closer. I thought Aljamain won. But it was a split decision, so it wasn't like a clear-cut black and white thing. And then also his fight with Sean O'Malley. I actually thought Jan won that fight. So, you know, he's not losing really badly. And then he's lost to Merab. You know, he lost by... But look at Merab. Oh, my God. That guy's a machine. So, yeah, he's never been finished still. Never been finished. And even his first loss in MMA, which was way before the UFC, was to Magomedov. It was a split decision. So most of his losses have been split decisions. Never been knocked out. Never been submitted. So I don't know what to expect with him. I really don't. I think this is a very winnable fight for him. But Song Yadong's really good. I mean, it's MMA. All these fights are hard to predict. It's just a big step up from his last opponent. I mean, Chris Gutierrez is very talented. But to go from Chris Gutierrez to Petr Yan, the former champion. Because, like, I just remember when Yan was champion. And when he was champion, nobody was beating him. Like, there was no question about it. Like, nobody was beating him. So I think that out of the two, Song has showed a little bit more of, I guess, I don't know. There's, gosh, my allergies are terrible. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Song Yadong, I feel like there's more opportunities for Yan to beat him. Because Yan is very talented, not only in his boxing, but also his wrestling. Curtis Blades versus Jailton Almeida. So, Curtis Blades, 17-4. Jailton Almeida, 20-2. Yeah, I feel like Jailton Almeida is going to win this fight for sure. Well, I won't say for sure. I won't say that. Because Curtis Blades is very good. And his wrestling is next level. Also, his ground and pound, very underrated. But Jailton Almeida is a monster. Like, he just is. I don't see anybody beating him anytime soon. I just don't. And you can judge him off of the Derek Blades... oh, my God. Derek Lewis. You can judge him off the Derek Lewis performance. But that was a short notice fight. He was supposed to fight Curtis Blades. Completely different matchup. So you got to think game plan wise, you know, probably wasn't super prepared for that. And yeah, the last time that he lost was literally 6 years ago. So that's a lot of momentum that he's got going for him. So I just think in this fight could go one of two ways. This could be a very high level grappling match, or it could be a mediocre stand-up battle, let's be honest. Neither of these guys are really... I mean, I'm sure that Jailton absolutely could knock Curtis Blades out, especially since we've seen other people do it. But most likely, I would think he would probably get a submission here. I would think. I don't even remember the last time he knocked somebody out. It's probably been... I mean, and I'm talking like knock somebody unconscious. I don't know. But Curtis Blades, I just don't know what to expect. Because, like, even in the fights that he loses, like Derek Lewis, he was winning that entire fight up until, like, was the 4th or 5th round or something like that, where he got knocked out. So I don't know. And he's coming off a loss, so that could either make him very hungry or it could be a bad thing. It could be hard for him to overcome that the loss to Pavlovich. So I don't know, but it is crazy when you look at his resume and all the guys that he's beat. I mean, he has a win over Junior Dos Santos, Alex Volkov, Alistair Overeem, Mark Hunt, Olenek. The Tom Aspinall fight was kind of a weird one because it was an injury. Chris Dawkins, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. So it's like when you look at his resume, it's insanely impressive. And the only guys that he's lost to are Derek Lewis, one of the heaviest hitters in the division, and then Francis and Pavlovich, who just fought Tom Aspinall for interim title. So it's like, when you look at his resume, it's really hard to call this fight, honestly. I don't care how much of an expert you are in MMA. This is a heavyweight fight. This is a different game. This is a different game that they are playing. So, we'll see. And then I'm really excited for this fight. Caitlin Chookagian versus Maycee Barber. Maycee Barber has impressed me so much, and she's gotten so much better in a short period of time. So I really don't know what to expect here. I feel like Chookagian is more of a volume fighter. She throws a lot of punches, maybe doesn't do the most damage with all of them. I would think if she were going to win, it would probably be a decision. Maycee Barber, I do think, has more of a finishing ability, in my opinion, in this fight. And I think that she could either try to use her wrestling to maybe get to a ground and pound type of situation or to win by a decision. But she's got some impressive wins too. Actually, she has a lot of impressive wins. Now, I will say that there are a couple of them that were like pretty close decisions, so it's hard to really judge sometimes. But if you look at her last performance against Amanda Hebos, if you're not impressed with that, then you're insane. Because that was such a good performance. That was probably her best performance that I've ever seen. So I think she's only getting better. She's so young. She's only 25 years old, so I think she has a lot of time still to even improve. I think this is the perfect fight for her, honestly. She's coming off a win. She's got momentum going. Chookagian's coming off a loss. So it'll be interesting, but at the end of the day, I would probably expect Maycee Barber to get the dub in this one. And then we've got a very high-level lightweight fight, Mateusz Gamrot versus Rafael dos Anjos. This one's really hard to call because I just don't know. I mean, Rafael dos Anjos is a legend of MMA. A legend. And Mateusz Gamrot, probably one of the best grapplers in the UFC. And really just a very good mixed martial artist in general. So I'm very interested to see how this fight goes. I think this is going to be a very technical, high-level fight. I could see it going the distance. I could see it going all 3 rounds. And I could definitely see Gamrot getting the win here. I just don't know how much Rafael's experience is going to kick in and maybe help him get the win in this one. So I don't know, but if I was betting on it, I would probably pick Gamrot if I was betting on this fight. And then we've got Pedro Munoz versus Kyler Phillips. This is going to be a fun bantamweight fight. Pedro Munoz is really always fun to watch, in my opinion. I feel like he is so underappreciated, honestly. Has a lot of experience, actually, which will probably... I don't know. This is another one that's tough to call, because Kyler Phillips, he's got a lot of momentum, too. He's coming off a win, so I'm not sure how this is going to go. And then there's some really interesting fights on the early prelims, too. Ian Cutelaba versus Felipe Lins, sorry. And then Michelle Pajeda is on the prelims. Josh Parisian versus Rebelis de Spain. So Rebelis is that guy that he's like 6'7" or something crazy, and his fights are just all immediate knockouts. So that's going to be really, really interesting. But But yeah, I'm very excited for this card. I'm very excited for the main event, obviously. But also the co-main event is going to be insane. Anytime there's lightweight fights on a card, I get very excited. Lightweight and bantamweight, definitely my 2 favorite divisions. So this is going to be a lot of fun. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect, honestly, from a lot of these fights. I feel like they could go either way, a lot of them. So we shall see. But that's all I got for you guys today. So I appreciate you hanging out with me while I talk about fights. And I will be back next week for a recap of UFC 299. I will also be doing a deep dive on UFC 300. I don't know when I'm going to release that, but I'm already working on it, so we'll see. But I'm going to do a full breakdown of that card. And yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. We've got, hopefully, I don't think it's been officially confirmed, but we're supposed to have a UFC event here in St. Louis, May 11th. So that's going to be insane. And we've got a lot of really interesting stuff going on in the local scene. We've got kickboxing and Muay Thai coming up here at the end of March. And then we've got, obviously, the UFC card supposed to be here May 11th. So a lot of really cool stuff going on. Definitely worth paying attention to the local scene if you aren't already. But I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody listening, watching. I appreciate everybody's support. I don't know if I announced it on the last episode. I don't think I did. But I will be doing media at UFC 300, so I'm really excited. And thank you so much to Kimura for the opportunity. They're a MMA media outlet based out of Sweden that discovered me through my podcast, so that's really cool. That they liked my content enough to bring me on and allow me to cover probably what will be one of the biggest events of the decade in MMA. So I'm very, very excited for that opportunity. And I'm already kind of diving into the matchups and diving into watching film and all that kind of stuff with UFC 300. So I'm really excited for not only going, but also just the process in doing the deep dive and kind of just really analyzing that entire card from top to bottom, and then being able to meet with the fighters and do media at that event is just unreal. Never thought I would get an opportunity like that. So very grateful, very excited, and I will not disappoint you guys. I'll make sure that it is A++. So very excited for that. But I appreciate everybody, again, watching, listening, however you consume this, and I will see you next week. Bye.